Hey everybody, this is Doa, and I'm so happy to be back casting another game for you, and I'm actually really excited because I'm going to be casting some games from ICCup's Korean weekly tournaments now for the next couple weeks at least, if not longer. They've got so many replays from their weekly Korean tournament now that Nation Voice and ICCup are hosting that they just can't cast them all on the stream when they do the actual tournament, so they're passing off some of those great replays to casters like myself so we can get them to you, get you the most high-level Korean StarCraft 2 games we possibly can. So I am so excited to get this going here. We have got none other than Incredible Miracles Ready, who some of you may actually know from before. You're like, I've never heard of I'm Ready, but if you remember GSL Code A from last season, there was a player called IMNuts, and that is exactly who this guy is. That's right, it is IMNuts, and so I'm just going to call him Nuts because that's just kind of how I think people know him better at this point. They don't know him by his name Ready that much, and I think in most cases he does prefer to go by Nuts, actually, for whatever reason. But anyway, we've got I'm Nuts spawning as our yellow Protoss player at the 6 o'clock position on ICCup Test Bug. Now his opponent is going to be our blue Zerg player. It is none other than STCurious. If you can sound out Hangul, you can read that. It does say STCurious. So yeah, so we've got Curious versus Nuts, so PvZ on ICCup, and PvZ has been one of those matchups that's really been getting, I think, a little bit more exciting lately. We've seen Protoss players kind of struggle a little bit lately with the new strategies that Zergs have started to do against a lot of the common toss openings like Forge expands and such. So I'm really kind of curious to see what these players are going to do. Curious and Nuts are both players that we really haven't seen all that much in the GSL yet, so they're both relatively new players to me as well, which I think is always kind of exciting to see what these kind of relatively unknown players decide to do. We do have Nuts putting down his first gas, getting things going kind of normally. I would imagine we're probably going to see a Cyber Core right here in the next couple seconds, but what is Curious going to do? I am still recovering from a cold I picked up at MLG as well, so if I do cough once or twice, I do definitely apologize for that. I just did not want to wait to cast games anymore. It's been like 5 days since I've casted, and that is way too long. There is a wall going up for Nuts right there. Curious will do a little bit of scudding with his Overlord, so I would imagine we're going to see with the second gas going down some sort of expand build from Nuts. Usually most Protoss players aren't doing those one bases anymore. It's more commonly some sort of expand build. Looks like probably a 3-gate expand, possibly. You know, he could throw in a Robo, but a lot of Protoss do like to expand with 3 gateways. It's easily the safest thing to do against Zerg these days, other than possibly like the Forge expand on big maps, in my opinion anyway. But it looks like we do have Curious going hatchery after getting his pool and then his gas. He did get enough gas to get the Zergling speed started, so he'll be going with that. Not really the speedling expand, but still getting the speed pretty fast, nonetheless, sending out some Zerglings to do a little bit of scouting here. And yeah, I'm not really too familiar with these players' styles, so I'm kind of curious to see what we're going to see out of these two guys. We do have poking up the ramp a little bit, and interestingly enough, he'll see the Stalker first, so that is actually a very interesting little tell by IMNuts there. And wow, that Stalker is really getting out of position. This is actually so dangerous what IMNuts is doing right now, guys. I mean, getting that Stalker out there, he has no idea if there are more Zerglings being produced. I mean, we can see that there are, but really kind of playing things a little bit dangerously. You don't want to lose that early Stalker. Very bad to do that. Looks like we do have Nuts putting down 2 more gateways, so probably will be a little bit of a modified 3-gate expand. Usually you get the Zeld first. He decided to go with the Stalker, probably just to chase away any Overlords from doing some scouting or anything like that. Looks like Curious might try to poke in again, but with those 2 sentries there, yeah, he's not going to be able to do anything besides just get a look at the ramp. Now let's take a look back at the base of Curious, extending his creep here. This is so good. I mean, it's even in Korea, you see so many players forgetting to connect their bases with the creep tumors. I don't know why that is, but it's just something that seems to get forgotten all the time, even at the high level, so I'm really happy to see Curious doing that right away. That's a very little cool little nice touch that a lot of Zerg players tend to miss. He does have some speedlings kind of threatening out here. He can maybe delay this expansion for a little bit more if it is going to be an expand. Oh, a Zergling actually gets in the base. It's going to see everything that Nuts has. And what Nuts has is basically just 3 gateways, so Curious can kind of count on an expand. He was able to see that there wasn't a hidden 4th gateway anywhere. Some Protoss, of course, do that fake expand into, you know, Nexus Canceller, just into a 4-gate. But it looks like this is a legitimate expand here. I don't think that Nuts is planning on doing any sort of crazy pushing with this. It just doesn't kind of feel like it, I guess you could say. So, yeah, meanwhile, back at the base of Curious, getting a spine crawler here, just wants to be safe. But look at that, already the bases are connected with creep, and that is going to be so helpful later in the game. You know, we might see that come in handy depending on if the Protoss player puts down a Stargate or something like that. You want your queens to be able to get from base to base. Getting his Roach Warren, getting +1 for melee. Both players playing really well. We've got a Forge going down for IMNuts right now, so he's going to be able to get his upgrades going as well. And I'm really curious to see now if Nuts decides to go with kind of heavy gateway pressure, or if he's going to go with something like, you know, a more tech heavy possibly. We'll have to wait and see here. He may want to consider throwing down a cannon or a robo just to get that detection here, because a lot of Zerg players do still use this Roach Warren to get a fast burrow for that. We can see that the lair is already going down, so Curious certainly could be doing that. Burrow, of course, is pretty nice if it's not detected. But for now, Nuts may consider doing a bit of a push here. He's got a good amount of sentries, and some Protoss do like to do sort of a soft push after doing that 3-gate expand. But I think it looks more like Nuts is just going to play a little bit more defensively this game, so we'll have to see how he progresses here. Second spine crawler going down for Curious. And Curious is kind of one of those players that's always sort of flirted around the edges of the GSL. You know, he's seen a couple games in the Team League and things like that. Hasn't really made a name for himself yet, but he's around enough that people kind of know of him anyway. So I have to see how he does in the next coming seasons here. There are these neutral supply depots on the map too to prevent walling in, you know, prevent Nuts from doing that great cannon thing here, you know, putting up 3 pylons and then canning the expansion if Curious was foolish enough to go hatch first against Protoss. Looks like a couple more gateways being added on. And looks like Curious trying to get in with some Zerglings, but there's enough sentries that he's not going to be able to do too much damage. Actually, never mind. He's able to pick off 2 sentries. That's pretty good. Any sentry you can kill early in the game as Zerg is going to be so helpful later on. So easily, I would say, worth sacrificing a few Lings to do that. Looks like a Twilight Council going up for Ready, so he's probably going to be going in for Blink Stalkers. Meanwhile, back at the base of Curious, getting that Link speed, getting Burrow, and getting his Overlord speed as well. So wouldn't be surprised at all to see burrowed roaches in the near future here. I really like that Curious is kind of keeping this Overlord here just in case he needs to do some scouting later on. That's good kind of forward thinking by our Zerg player. And there is a robo facility for IMNuts. So I'm probably going into something like Blink Stalker with either Immortals or Colossi, depending on how many roaches he sees, you know, depending on what he decides to do. Speaking of roaches, there's a good amount of them moving across the map, but he needs to be really careful because, yeah, Nuts has more than enough to take this out right now. Yeah, this is kind of a risky move by Curious, I gotta say. Man, guys, nothing is worse than casting while you're trying to get over a cold. Let me tell you, you're like, oh, my voice sounds terrible. But what can you do? I just love casting so much. Curious taking a 3rd base. And he's kind of building up an army right now. He may actually be planning on doing some sort of burrowed roach drop too. I mean, I have seen that in ZVPs recently. You notice one thing about this test bug map is that they do control some of the Xel'Naga towers with these rocks, so you have to kind of break those down to get a little bit more vision. I like that. It adds kind of a little unique element of strategy to the map. I always like it when little things like that are added in. ICCup does have a lot of cool maps. It's very, very cool. So, yeah, again, this is a part of ICCup's Korean weekly tournament. It's they broadcast that on Mondays and Tuesdays. Started at 6 p.m. Eastern last week. I've got a feeling that's probably when it's going to be each week. It's put on by ICCup and Nation Voice Communications. So thanks to them for putting that on. And definitely check that out, guys, because get to see lots of cool games with the top Korean pros. Very, very neat stuff. And I really love what Nuts is doing here, getting this kind of almost complete wall off here, trying to protect his base from run-bys as best he can. Looks like he's going to be going with some more Immortals here. But, oh, interestingly enough, Curious is actually going with Hydras. Where is it? He's getting his Hydralisk Den. There it is. Getting that range as well. And really against Blink Stalkers, Roach Hydra, and then you add some Speedlings on there, that still works okay, especially if the Protoss doesn't have a lot of sentries. And look at that, only 4 sentries right now for IMNuts, so the unit composition that Curious is using could do pretty well, especially once he gets those upgrades up and running. He is getting +2 for melee, so that's interesting that he's getting the melee upgrades and going with Hydras rather than a lot more Speedlings. I've got a feeling we're probably going to see him add on some Speedlings here, but man, doesn't it look like he wants to drop? I don't know. He hasn't research drop quite yet, but I've just got this feeling. It'd be cool. I like it when Zergs do that drop play. If you see plays like TSL Revival, they like doing the Roach drop play, especially against Terrans. But I don't know, I just have a lot of fun with it. Whenever I do ZVPs, I tend to kind of gravitate towards a drop play in the mid to late game. So we'll have to see if Curious decides to go the same way or not. Either way, he's looking in pretty good shape. He's ahead by about 40 supply right now. In Zerg versus Protoss, you really need a pretty big supply advantage to go head-to-head with a Protoss army at this point in the metagame. Or at this point in the game. I suppose it really doesn't have anything to do at all with the metagame, but you kind of get the idea. Force field's going down, not the best positioning for Curious to attack, but he is able to burrow under those force fields and get some decent shots off. But look at that, all those Immortals and all the Stalkers that Nuts has is going to be able to handle this army right now. I think if Curious gets a little bit better positioning, he's going to do a lot better in a fight against this composition. He needs to get that concave, but right now, Curious just has everything in kind of a ball, trying to get the Roaches in front there, as we can see, and moving in again. Not a lot of force fields, so at this point, this is going to go a lot better for Curious. Moving in those Roaches right now, more reinforcements coming in. Hydras in the back, able to fire with the Colossi and the Immortals. Both Immortals are down right now, so now it is just Blink Stalkers, but look at that. It doesn't even matter. The Stalker's able to do so much damage because of that Blink Micro, and now Curious again is on the run here. He is producing some more reinforcements, so Nuts does need to be careful. He is still behind by about 40 on supply, so with the reinforcing units that Curious is bringing out, Nuts actually might be in a bit of trouble here. He is getting a little bit over-aggressive. Usually in this position, you want to kind of pull back, try to take a third, but Nuts is now pulling back, so that's a good decision, I would say here. Curious is 0-0 right now for his Hydras and Roaches. He did only get melee upgrades. Keep that in mind. In the meantime, 2 attack upgrades for those Stalkers. That's also going to make a big difference when it does kind of come down to the fights. Nuts still looking to kind of threaten a little bit here. Producing some more Immortals. And looks like Curious letting his money get a little bit high there at the moment. Getting a Spire right now as well. That's an interesting decision by Curious. If I can find it, I will show it to you. There it is right there, the Spire going down as well as a Baneling Nest. So switching tech up completely, producing 40 Speedlings. So that is going to help quite a bit. I was waiting when the big round of Speedlings was going to come in because, man, you really need it against Blink Stalkers. Very, very hard to go Roach Hydra against a big, well-microed Blink Stalker army. He is getting drops as well. Oh, I'm getting excited now. Can't tell it from my voice because I'm sounding a little bit weird because of that illness, but I am excited on the inside. Here come all the Speedlings right now, and this is going to be much harder to micro against. Roaches firing from behind. This is looking a lot better for Curious. Much, much tougher to micro against all these Speedlings, but look at that. The Speedlings dying extremely quickly, and all the units are still able to fire, but the concave does favor IMNuts. To see who comes out ahead with the micro, it looks like Nuts may barely be able to take that, but there are some more reinforcing Hydras coming in from STCurious. Is it going to be enough? Hydras do very, very well against Stalkers, and it is enough. Looks like Nuts is going to be pushed back by Curious. The upgrade's really keeping him in the fight right now. +1 carapace is done for the Zerg units. That's going to help slightly. But overall, Curious is going to need to play a little bit defensive. The big thing right now, if you'll notice, is that Nuts has no idea about this third base right here. So that is going to be something that is in Curious's favor. A lot of Hydras being added on for Curious right now. Unit counting station says 23 Hydras. That is quite a few. 63 drones to only 44 probes as well. So Nuts, with staying on 2 bases so long, is really giving the advantage back to STCurious. Curious as well taking a 4th base, taking advantage of that mobility that the Protoss player does not have because he's been on 2 bases for so long. He basically has to just kind of sit in this general area. Look at that small army from Nuts right now, taking his 3rd, but I mean, it might be a little bit too late for that. 19 minutes into the game, and he's only just taking his 3rd. Yeah, I mean, usually you see Protoss players trying to take a faster 3rd just because it's relatively easy to defend it. I mean, your army is just that much stronger than the Zerg player, so why not take a 3rd and then wait until you're maxed on 3 bases, get that big death ball going. But Nuts maybe being a little bit too aggressive this game, and I think that's given a big, big lead to Curious. You can see that he's almost 100 supply ahead right now. 157, 279 for our Protoss player, and you can tell that he wasn't producing drones the entire time as well, or probes rather, I'm sorry, probes, because again, looking at the worker count, 44 to 62, so that's not something that's going to help him be able to make that 3rd base really effective. He is mined out at his main, so I suppose he only needs enough for 2 bases, but still, I mean, Nuts just really not playing the best economy game. And if you remember, he didn't get too far in Code A, so maybe he is a player that's still kind of developing yet. He is a Protoss player on Incredible Miracle, and Incredible Miracle does obviously have strong Terran and Zerg players, but is kind of lacking a little bit in the Protoss department, so he doesn't maybe have the best practice partners on that team. Of course, the Korean players do tend to practice a lot with each other, intra-team, but I don't know, kind of interesting, because the Protoss players from IM have been a little bit lackluster so far. I mean, we've seen Siege show us some pretty cool games, but overall, they haven't achieved a lot of success. I mean, Younghwa hasn't done terribly well either, but maybe that'll all change in the future. Baneling drops coming in from Curious as well. A lot of speedlings, and I've got a feeling that Nuts is just going to be absolutely crushed by this attack. Hydra's coming in from behind. Here come the Baneling drops. No micro at all. The Banelings are going to annihilate all these Stalkers. Oh, the humanity. GG, that is it. I'm ready / I'm Nuts not ready for the might of STCurious. This is a round of 64 game, so it was a best of 1. So in this particular weekly tournament, Curious did advance to the round of 32 with this game. So a little bit of an interesting PvZ there. I'm Nuts just not able to handle Curious in the macro game, and STCurious coming out on top. Thanks for watching, guys. Definitely subscribe if you enjoyed the cast. Definitely follow me on Twitter as well as at DoaSC. Thanks again to ICCup and Nation Voice for putting on this Korean weekly tournament. I'll be casting more games from this, so definitely stay tuned. Again, this is Doa. Casting for my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, guys. See you on the next cast.